I'm Richard Aubrey, and I'm a long-standing friend of Israel. I'm a member of Stop War Coalition, and I've also been a supportive member of Jewish Voice for Labour. My friends in Jewish Voice for Labour, my Jewish friends in Jewish Voice for Labour aren't able to be here today, but they wanted me to pass on their message of solidarity and support for you in this demonstration. You'll have seen them at many other demonstrations. They have their banner with them which says, "Always with the oppressed, never with the oppressor." Oh, okay. What I want to say today is to you as campaigners for justice and freedom. I didn't know I'd be standing next to this poster from Nelson Mandela, but one of the things I was going to talk about was the inspiration that we find, and many times I've heard people on these marches saying that our struggle against South Africa, against apartheid, was something we can draw inspiration from. There are similarities and there are differences. The huge difference, of course, is that we never saw in South Africa what we've seen in these last weeks. We've never seen so many people killed with these modern bombs. We've never seen that sort of degree of devastation, thankfully. And for us, Palestinian lives matter. They are more than numbers. We've heard their stories. We've seen the pictures. We've heard the stories of fathers who've lost their children. We've seen the children who died. And we have our reaction to this. It's profound sadness, and it's anger, but it's also bewilderment. I'm sure there's many people here who've asked the same questions I've asked when I've heard our political representatives or people at the UN not voting for a ceasefire, and we ask, how can they not vote for a ceasefire now? There's another big difference from South Africa. South Africa did have an effective propaganda department with friends around the world, but they never had that weapon of anti-Semitism, which the Israeli government have used so well. And that's why it's so important that Jewish people have been prepared to stand with all of us, people in Manchester with their banners saying Jews against genocide. We must be really clear. We are anti-racist, we are against Islamophobia, we are against anti-Semitism. We will stand up for Jewish people if they are attacked. But we will also be very clear that denouncing the abuse of human rights of Palestinians for centuries, well, for years and years and years, that is not anti-Semitism to denounce that. To call out the war crimes of the Israeli government is not anti-Semitism. To call out and denounce the policies and the words of the Israeli government which amount to genocide, that is not anti-Semitism. There are similarities in the struggle with against apartheid. One of those is a long struggle. It's a long walk to freedom for the South African people. It's a long walk to freedom for Palestine. Starting back in 1917 with the Balfour Declaration and the Nakba in 1948, it was the same for the South African people. And in solidarity, that means it's not an instant success. And sometimes giving out leaflets can feel like slow progress and that we're not doing anything. But we must continue. And we must celebrate the successes. As Lizzie was just mentioning, there have been successes. Last thing on South Africa, I'll just say this, because there's so many Muslim people here, is of course South Africa was a struggle for black South Africans, but that was supported by Jewish people and by Muslims. And one name you can look for inspiration was the name of Abdullah Haron, who was an imam in South Cape Town, who stood against apartheid, and then in 1969 was detained and killed by the South African government. So in that struggle as well, people stood side by side. I want to end with reading out something that was sent to me by the Amos Trust. This is a Christian charity which for a long time has had projects in sort of Palestine, and they've made some good friends there. And they describe this as a prayer for peace. If it's a prayer that can be shared by people of different faiths, and if you're not of any faith, you can hear this as a moment of reflection for what really matters to us. It's a short poem. There's 2 words in it which you may not know. The sunbird is the national bird of Palestine, and the ney is an Arabic flute they use in Palestine. May the peace of the sunbird's song be heard once more on the shores of Gaza. May the peace of the ney's lament wash over the hills of Bethlehem, and may justice flow like a river, like a never-ending flood. Go in peace, as the makers of peace, as those who believe that another world is still possible, and we shall hear her breathing again one day.